Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take a stack of source material, dig through it, and pull out the absolute most important knowledge and insights, all tailored just for you.
Consider us your expert guides, really, helping you navigate complex information. We'll cut through the noise so you can get truly well-informed, quickly, and hopefully without feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly. And today we're tackling something pretty foundational for anyone serious about how organizations function in the digital age. We're doing a deep dive into the essential primer for understanding enterprise governance of information and technology, or EG, using the COBIT 2019 framework.
That's right. Our source material for this dive is the COBIT 2019 Framework, Introduction and Methodology document, published by ISACA. This document is really, the starting point if you want to grasp what COBIT 2019 is all about.
And getting EG'd right is, well, it's more critical than ever. With digital transformation accelerating across pretty much every industry, INT isn't just a support function anymore.
No, not at all.
It's absolutely fundamental to an enterprise's survival, its sustainability, and its growth. This means boards and senior management simply cannot afford to ignore or, just delegate decisions about INT.
Right. It's complex, definitely, but essential.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to act like a pair of instructors, sort of guiding you through this core document.
Mm-hmm.
We'll highlight the key concepts, the definitions, the overall structure, pulling out the most important nuggets directly from the source.
Yeah, our goal is really to give you a solid handle on the foundational elements of COBIT 2019, what it is, how it thinks.
We'll essentially use the document's own structure as our roadmap, but we'll focus on explaining the ideas and insights, not just, reading through the sections word for word.
And before we dive into the main chapters, it's worth noting the document includes some important context right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, details about ISAC itself. It's a global professional association, plus the usual disclaimers clarifying its guidance, not, a guaranteed recipe for success.
Right. Professionals still need to apply judgment.
Exactly. And it acknowledges the many, many experts involved in creating it.
It's also worth noting the dedication to John Lanehart. He was apparently instrumental in COBIT's history.
Yeah, that's a nice touch. It kind of reminds us that frameworks like this, they aren't just created overnight. They're built on decades of collective experience and, well, a lot of effort from a lot of people.
A distillation of knowledge, really.
Precisely. And as you probably saw if you glanced at the table of contents, this introductory document covers a surprising amount from the basic why all the way through to concepts of implementation and design.
So it's a pretty comprehensive intro.
It really is. So let's jump into Chapter 1, the introduction itself.
Okay. Section 1.1 gets straight to the point. Enterprise Governance of Information and Technology. And it immediately tells you why EGITE is, well, non-negotiable today.
Yeah, because INT drives digital transformation, right? And that transformation is essential for creating value, for support, sustainability, growth, everything.
So decisions about technology are now core business decisions.
Absolutely. Which means they need to be overseen at the highest levels. You can't just leave it to the IT department anymore.
And it defines EGITE not as something separate from corporate governance.
No, it's an integral part of it. That's a key point.
Okay. And it describes how this governance is actually exercised.
Yeah, typically by the board. They oversee the processes, the structures, the relational mechanisms, basically how decisions about INT get made and monitored.
And the purpose of all this oversight?
Ultimately, it's to enable both business and IT people to do their jobs effectively, make sure business and IT are aligned, pulling in the same direction.
And create real business value from all those sometimes very expensive INT investments.
Exactly. Now, a key insight right up front, something the document really emphasizes, is that EGITE is inherently complex.
Right. No magic bullet here.
No, definitely not. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. It must be tailored to the specific context and needs of your particular enterprise.
And that tailoring, it seems, requires boards and senior management to really step up.
Yes. Accept accountability. Foster a different mindset, a different culture around how INT value is pursued and measured. It's a significant shift.
Yeah, moving beyond just keeping the lights on.
Right. Okay, moving on to Section 1.2, the benefits of information and technology governance. This explains the so what. Why invest the time and effort in doing this well?
What's in it for the business?
Fundamentally, it's about driving value from all those digital initiatives while at the same time managing the business risks they inevitably introduce.
Makes sense.
The document highlights three main expected outcomes, or benefits, from successful EG-CHI. First, benefits realization.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It's about actively creating, maintaining, and even increasing value from I&T investments. Think delivering solutions that are actually fit for purpose, delivered on time, within budget.
And that actually generate the intended benefits you plan for?
Precisely. It's value creation tied directly back to business goals.
And there's a crucial distinction COBIT makes early on here, isn't there? Between IT and INT.
Yes, very important. ET is often seen as just the department, right? But INT encompasses all the information and technology used across the entire enterprise, wherever it might sit.
So this framework is about governing that broader scope.
Exactly, the whole picture. Okay, the second outcome is risk optimization.
So managing the downsides.
Pretty much, it's about addressing the business risks associated with using, owning, operating, or adopting INT. We're talking about potential INT-related events, data breaches, system failures, bad project outcomes that could negatively impact the business.
So if benefits realization is about creating value.
Risk optimization is all about preserving the value you already have and mitigating potential losses.
Yeah.
And crucially, it should be integrated into your overall enterprise risk management, not siloed.
Got it. And the third outcome?
Resource optimization. This is about ensuring you have the right capabilities and resources, and that includes not just infrastructure and applications, but also people, skills, data, information itself.
And making sure they're used effectively and efficiently. Getting the most bang for your buck from your INT assets.
You got it. And the document emphasizes that strategic alignment and performance measurement are woven throughout all three of these.
So ensuring INT efforts are always pulling in the same direction as the overall enterprise goals.
Exactly. And it mentions case studies and research showing tangible benefits, things like reduced cost, increased innovation, better alignment, more trust.
And conversely, poorly governed INT leads to, well, problems.
Yeah, worse performance, failure to achieve strategic goals. The stakes are high.
This seems much broader than just GRC sometimes gets interpreted.
It is. The document notes that GRC, governance, risk, compliance, can sometimes be viewed narrowly, maybe focusing mostly on compliance and related risks. EDGI, as COBIT defines it, is definitely broader.
That broader perspective is key. Okay, Section 1.3 positions COBIT 2019 itself.
Right. It's a best practice framework designed to help enterprises understand, design, and implement this EDGI stuff.
And it's not new, right? It builds on decades of evolution.
Over 25 years, yeah. Started out more focused on IT audit and gradually expanded into this comprehensive governance and management framework. It's pretty widely accepted in the field now.
Section 1.3.1 sounds really important. What is COBIT and what is it not? Clearing up misunderstandings.
Definitely. This is crucial for setting expectations.
So what is COBIT, according to the source?
It's a framework for the governance and management of enterprise INT. Again, that emphasis on INT across the whole enterprise, not just the IT department silo.
And it makes a fundamental distinction.
Yes, the difference between governance and management. This runs throughout the entire framework.
Okay, explain that distinction again. Governance is?
Governance, typically the board's role or governing body, is about evaluating stakeholder needs, setting direction through decisions and prioritization, and then monitoring performance and compliance against that direction. Think evaluate, direct, monitor.
Okay. And management?
Management, typically executive and senior management's responsibility, is about the actual planning, building, running, and monitoring of activities needed to achieve the enterprise objectives in alignment with the direction set by governance. Think plan, build, run, monitor.
So setting the direction versus executing it.
Pretty much. COBIT also defines the components needed to build this system, things like processes, organizational structures, policies, procedures, information flows, culture, skills.
The building block.
Exactly. And it defines design factors to help you tailor the system to your needs. It addresses issues by grouping these components into objectives that you need to achieve.
Right. Now, what is COBIT not?
Okay. Also important, it's not a full description of your entire IT environment. It's not a framework for organizing all your business processes. And critically, it's not a technical framework for managing the technology itself, like network protocols or database administration.
So it doesn't tell you which specific technology to use.
No. And it doesn't prescribe what your IT strategy should be or what your architecture must look like or how much you should spend.
Okay, so instead of prescribing the what?
It defines which decisions need to be taken, and it provides guidance on how those decisions should be made and by whom. It structures the decision-making process around INT.
That's a really crucial distinction. It sets the rules of the game, not dictates the plays.
Well put. Section 1.4 just confirms the document structure, mapping out the chapters on audience, principles, concepts, performance design, implementation, which, conveniently, is exactly our plan for this deep dive.
Perfect. Let's move on to Chapter 2 then. Intended audience. Section 2.1 identifies the key governance stakeholders.
Right, so who is this actually for? Basically, anyone who has a stake in how I&T is governed within an enterprise or in corporate governance more broadly.
The document lists quite a few, doesn't it?
It does. It breaks down the benefits for various internal stakeholders. The board gets clarity on oversight, exec management gets guidance on organizing things, business managers learn how to engage to get the solutions they need, IT managers get structure.
So, value for different roles inside.
Yes, and also for external parties. Think regulators needing assurance of compliance, or business partners and IT vendors who rely on the enterprise's I&T being reliable and secure.
Makes sense. Everyone has a stake.
But a key point here is that while COBIT provides this generic guidance, applying it effectively isn't automatic. It requires experience and a good understanding of your own enterprise's specific context to tailor it properly.
Right, back to that tailoring point. Okay, let's unpack Chapter 3. COBIT principles.
Okay.
This feels like the philosophical foundation.
It really is. The document states clearly that COBIT 2019 is built on 2 sets of principles.
Okay, what's the first set?
First, there are 6 principles for a governance system. Think of these as the core requirements, the characteristics that any effective EG8 system should have. Figure 3.1 in the document illustrates them nicely.
Principle 1.
Provide stakeholder value. Seems obvious, but it's fundamental. The whole point of the governance system is to ensure I&T generates value for stakeholders, balancing benefits realization, risk optimization, and resource optimization.
Makes sense. Principle 2.
Holistic approach. A governance system isn't just one thing. It's made up of interacting components, processes, structures, people, policies, culture, technology. They all have to work together holistically.
Yeah.
Can't just focus on optimizing one piece in isolation.
Right, it's a system. Principle 3.
Dynamic governance system. This is really key, especially today with the pace of change. The system has to be dynamic, adaptable. When things change, like your strategy or the tech landscape, or regulations, which they constantly do.
You have to consider the impact on your governance system and potentially adjust it.
Exactly. It can't be static. Principle 4.
Governance distinct from management.
We keep coming back to this one, but it's that important. A clear separation between the evaluate, direct, monitor activities of governance and the plan, build, run, monitor activities of management. Different roles, different focus.
Got it. Principle 5.
Tailored to enterprise needs. Again, hammering this home. The system absolutely must be customizable using those design factors we'll talk more about later. No cookie-cutter approach works because every organization is unique.
And the last one, Principle 6.
End-to-end governance system. This means it covers all I&T used anywhere in the enterprise, not just within the formal IT department. And it considers the full life cycle, the entire flow of information and technology from conception to delivery and support.
Okay, that's the 6 for the system itself. What's the second set of principles?
Section 3.3 covers the 3 principles for a governance framework. These are the principles that guide how COBIT itself is designed and maintained as a framework.
Principles for the tool itself. What's the first one?
Based on a conceptual model. A good framework needs a clear, logical model showing its key components and how they relate. This promotes consistency and makes it easier to understand, use, and even potentially automate parts of it.
Makes sense. Second framework principle.
Open and flexible. The framework needs to be adaptable. It should allow for adding new content, like guidance for emerging technologies or specific industry issues, without breaking the core structure. This openness is key to COBIT 2019's design.
And the third.
Aligned to major standards. A strong framework doesn't live in a bubble. It needs to align with and integrate relevant standards, frameworks, and regulations from other bodies. This reinforces COBIT's position as a kind of umbrella framework that connects various pieces of guidance.
Okay. Section 3.4 just summarizes some improvements in COBIT 2019.
Yeah, highlighting things like increased flexibility through design factors and focus areas, better alignment with current standards, and an improved approach to performance management.
Yeah.
Basically saying this version builds effectively on the past.
These principles really do seem to underpin everything else.
They absolutely do. They set the stage for the more detailed concepts.
Which leads us nicely into Chapter 4, Basic Concepts, Governance System and Components. Section 4.1 gives an overview of the COBIT 2019 product family.
Right. Think of it as a suite of related publications, not just one massive book. There's the Introduction and Methodology Guide we're walking through now.
The Governance and Management Objectives Guide, which details all 40 objectives.
The Design Guide, which gets deeper into tailoring the system using those design factors.
And the Implementation Guide, focused on the practical steps of putting it all into practice.
Exactly. And it also introduces the concept of focus areas.
Ah, yes, you mentioned these, like specific lenses.
Kind of. They provide more detailed, tailored guidance for specific topics or contexts. Examples given include things like cybersecurity, cloud computing, DevOps, risk, even guidance specifically for small and medium enterprises, SMEs.
So you can apply the core framework, but use a focus area for more specific advice.
Precisely. It highlights the framework's adaptability. It builds on COBIT 5 and other sources, reinforces that umbrella position by aligning with standards, and it's designed to evolve with community contributions over time.
Okay, Section 4.2 gets into governance and management objectives. These are the specific goals for INT.
Yeah, these are the things that need to be achieved for INT to actually contribute to the overall enterprise goals.
Right.
The core idea is that each objective relates to a specific process and the other components needed to make that process work.
And back to that key distinction.
Always. Governance objectives found in the EDM domain are about oversight, evaluate, direct, monitor, think board-level concerns.
Whereas management objectives in the APO, BAI, DSS, and MEA domains are about execution.
Right. Align, plan, organize, APO, build, acquire, implement, BAI, deliver, service support, DSS, and monitor, evaluate, assess, MEA. These cover the planning, building, running, and performance monitoring activities.
So the 5 domains group these 40 objectives logically based on the type of activity.
Exactly. When we talk about achieving value or managing risk, these objectives provide the concrete statements of what needs to happen within INT.
Got it. Section 4.3 then details the components of the governance system. If objectives are the what, components are the how and with what.
Yeah, these are the building blocks you actually use to construct and sustain your governance system. The framework identifies 7 types and, crucially, stresses they all interact holistically.
Okay, let's list them. Processes.
The sets of practices and activities, organizational structures.
The key decision-making entities, committees, teams, roles, principles, policies, and frameworks.
The documented guidance, the rules of the road, information.
Ah, and this is specifically the information needed for the governance system itself, right? Like performance reports, risk data.
Exactly. Then, culture, ethics, and behavior, the often overlooked but critical human element.
People, skills, and competencies, having the right people with the right capabilities.
And finally, services, infrastructure, and applications, the technology that actually supports the governance system and its processes.
And the document calls these generic components, which can then have variants.
Right. Generic components are in the core model, applicable broadly, but often need customizing. Variants are based on the generic ones, but specifically tailored for a focus area or context, like a specific process variant for DevOps.
Okay. Section 4.4 elaborates a bit more on focus areas.
Yeah, just reinforcing that a focus area is essentially a collection of relevant objectives and components, maybe with some variants tailored to address a specific topic, domain, or issue, like cybersecurity or digital transformation.
And it repeats that COBIT is open-ended here.
Yes, it emphasizes that the number of potential focus areas is virtually unlimited, allowing the framework to grow and adapt as new challenges or technologies emerge. Experts and practitioners can contribute new ones.
Shows that flexibility principle in action.
Definitely. Now, Section 4.5 introduces a really critical concept for tailoring, design factors.
These are the things that influence how we should design our specific system.
Exactly. They are the internal and external factors that shape what an effective governance system looks like for your specific enterprise. Getting these right is key to successful tailoring.
And there are 11 of them identified in the document.
That's right. Let's quickly list them. First, your overall enterprise strategy. Are you focused on growth, innovation, cost leadership, client service?
Second, the specific enterprise goals supporting that strategy.
Third, your risk profile. What kinds of INT-related risks are you most exposed to, and what's your appetite for risk?
Fourth, current INT-related issues. What problems or materialized risks have you actually been facing recently?
Fifth, the external threat landscape. Are you operating in a relatively normal or a high-threat environment?
6. Your compliance requirements, are you subject to low, normal, or high levels of regulation?
7th, the fundamental role of IT in your business, is it just a support function essential for operations like a factory, needed for turnaround, or truly strategic?
8th, your sourcing model for IT, mostly outsourced, cloud-based, insourced, or a hybrid.
9th, your IT implementation methods, predominantly agile, DevOps, traditional waterfall, or some kind of hybrid.
10th, your technology adoption strategy, are you typically a first mover, a follower, or a slow adopter of new tech?
And finally, 11th, your enterprise size, broadly categorized as large or SME, small and medium enterprise.
Wow, okay, that's a comprehensive list. So all these factors influence the design choices,
Absolutely. They help you decide which parts of COBIT to emphasize, what capability levels to aim for, and whether you need specific component variants.
which leads perfectly into Section 4.6, the goals cascade. How does this relate?
The goals cascade is the mechanism COBIT provides to translate high-level stakeholder needs and enterprise goals down into specific, actionable governance and management objectives for INT. It directly uses some of those design factors like enterprise goals.
So it connects the why, stakeholder needs, business goals, to the what, INT objectives.
Precisely. It helps ensure that what INT is focusing on is actually aligned with and supporting what the enterprise as a whole is trying to achieve. The flow generally goes: stakeholder needs, enterprise goals, alignment goals, governance and management objectives.
And alignment goals is the term COBIT 2019 uses instead of the older IT-related goals.
Yes, to really emphasize that INT goals aren't separate, they are about aligning INT efforts with business objectives. It avoids potential misunderstandings. The document provides lists of example enterprise goals like financial performance, customer satisfaction, often structured along balanced scorecard dimensions, and corresponding alignment goals like INT compliance, delivery of programs on time budget, business service continuity.
So the cascade provides that traceable link from top to bottom. Very powerful for prioritization.
Extremely useful. Okay, that brings us logically to Chapter 5, COBIT Governance and Management Objectives.
Section 5.1 basically says this chapter is the detailed list.
Pretty much. It states that this chapter lists all 40 of those governance and management objectives from the core model we saw visually earlier, and critically, provides their detailed purpose statements.
So if you want to know exactly what, say, objective APO01 managed INT management framework is supposed to achieve.
This is where you'd look in the actual document. It would give you the formal description like clarifying roles, implementing processes, etc.
And it does this for all 40 objectives across the 5 domains: EDM, APO, BAI, DSS, MEA.
Yes. Under EDM governance, you've got objectives like EDM 01, ensuring the governance system itself is set up and maintained, EDM 02, ensuring benefits are delivered, EDM 03, ensuring risk is optimized, EDM 04, ensuring resources are optimized, and EDM 05, ensuring stakeholder transparency.
Okay. And under APO, align, plan, organize.
You find objectives covering managing the overall INT framework: APO 1, strategy, APO 02, enterprise architecture, APO 03, innovation, APO 04, portfolio, APO 45, budget and costs, APO 6, human resources, APO 07, relationships, APO 8, service agreements, APO 9, vendors, APO 10, quality, APO 11, risk, APO 12, security, APO 13, and data, APO 14. It's the whole planning layer.
Comprehensive. Then BAI, build, acquire, implement.
This is about getting solutions built and deployed. Objectives include managing programs, BAI 01, requirements definition, BAI 02, solutions identification and build, BAI 03, availability and capacity, BAI 04, organizational change, BAI 05, IT changes, BAI 6, change acceptance and transitioning, BAI 07, knowledge, BAI 08, assets, BAS 09, configuration, BAI 10, and projects, BAI 11, using a specific project management approach.
The operational side: managing operations, DSS 01, service requests and incidents, DSS 02, problems, DSS 03, continuity, DSS 04, security services, DSS 05, and business process controls, DSS 06, keeping things running.
And finally, MEA, monitor, evaluate, assess. Closing the loop. Objectives here cover monitoring performance and conformance, MEA 01, the system of internal control, MEA 02, compliance with external requirements, MEA 03, and providing assurance, MEA 04.
Wow. Okay, so Chapter 5 provides the detailed purpose for every single one of those 40. That's the real meat of the framework's what.
It really is. For this deep dive, just understanding the scope of each domain and knowing those detailed descriptions exist is key. It shows the framework's breadth and depth.
Definitely. Okay, next up, Chapter 6, performance management in COBIT. How do we know if we're doing any of this well?
Exactly. Section 6.1 defines performance management, or CPM, as COBIT calls it, as essential. It's about understanding how well the governance system and its components are working, and importantly, how they can be improved.
So it's not just about assessment, but also improvement.
Right. CPM is integral to the whole thing. Section 6.2 lists 5 principles for CPM itself. It should be simple, consistent, reliable, flexible, and support different kinds of assessments.
Makes sense. Section 6.3 gives an overview of the CPM model and introduces capability versus maturity levels.
Yes, this is a key distinction in COBIT's performance management. Capability levels, usually measured on a scale of 0 to 5, assess how well a specific process is implemented and performing.
Okay, so capabilities for processes. What about maturity?
Maturity levels, also typically 0 to 5, are a higher level measure. They assess the overall state of performance for a focus area or a collection of related objectives and components.
So maturity depends on the capability of the underlying processes.
Exactly. You achieve a certain maturity level in, say, your risk management focus area when the relevant risk management processes within that focus area consistently achieve the required capability level.
Got it. And the framework aligns with CMMI concepts here?
Yes. COBIT 2019's process capability model is closely aligned with and extends concepts from CMMI Development V2.0, which is a well-known process improvement model.
Okay. Section 6.4 digs into managing performance of processes, detailing those 0-5 capability levels.
Yes. Right. Level 0 is incomplete. The process isn't implemented or fails to achieve its purpose. Level 1 is initial the process sort of happens, but it's unpredictable, poorly controlled.
Level 2 is managed, formerly performed in some models. The process achieves its purpose, its performance is managed, work products are controlled.
Level 3 is a standard process is defined for the organization and used, tailored where needed. Level 4 is quantitatively managed. Managed, the process is controlled using statistical and quantitative techniques.
And level 5 is optimizing the process is continuously improved based on quantitative understanding of variation and causes.
Exactly, is a progressive scale of process capability. The document also suggests ways to rate the activities within a process, from fully achieved down to not achieved, based on evidence.
And it reiterates how focus area maturity levels depend on these process capabilities.
Correct. You need the underlying processes to be capable before the overall focus area can be considered mature at a corresponding level.
Okay, what about Section 6.5, managing performance of other governance system components, like structures or culture?
This is interesting. The document acknowledges that there aren't really universally accepted formal methods, like CMMI for processes, to assess things like organizational structures, information quality, or culture and behavior.
So how does COBIT suggest handling those?
It suggests using more informal criteria. For organizational structures, you might assess if roles and responsibilities for processes are being executed successfully, or if good practices around things like decision rights and escalation are in place.
And for information items?
It points back to quality criteria defined in COBIT 5, looking at things like intrinsic quality, accuracy, objectivity, contextual quality, relevance, timeliness, completeness, and security privacy aspects. You assess the extent to which the information meets these criteria.
And for the really tricky one, culture and behavior.
It suggests it's possible to define desirable cultural traits and behaviors relevant to specific objectives, and then assess the extent to which those are exhibited. The detailed objectives guide apparently provides some pointers, and future focus area content might elaborate further.
So even for the softer components, COBIT encourages performance assessment, even if it's less formalized.
Right. It recognizes they are crucial parts of the system that need managing.
Okay, that leads logically into Chapter 7, designing a tailored governance system. We know we need to tailor it. How do we do it? Section 7.1 discusses the impact of design factors.
This brings those 11 design factors back into focus. This chapter gives a high-level overview. The separate design guide has much more detail, but it explains how these factors influence the tailoring process.
And there are 3 main ways they have an impact.
Yes. First, they influence management objective priority and selection. Depending on your context, your strategy, risks, issues, some of the 40 objectives will naturally become more important for you than others.
So you prioritize based on the factors.
Exactly. For example, a high-risk profile might make objectives related to risk management, like EDMS 03, APO 12, and security, like APO 13, DSCN 5, a higher priority, meaning you target higher capability levels for the processes supporting them.
Okay, that's the first impact. Second,
Component variation. The design factors might indicate that you need specific variations of the generic components.
Like the DevOps example.
Right. If you use DevOps, you'll need specific variants of processes, structures, maybe even cultural norms, particularly within objectives like BAIO3 solution build or DSSO1 operations, compared to a traditional shop. Or an SME might use the SME focus area guidance for simpler, less resource-intensive structures.
Makes sense. And the third impact.
Driving the need for specific focus areas. Your design factors might point you directly towards using one of the predefined focus areas for more detailed, tailored guidance. High threat landscape. Look at the cybersecurity focus area. Highly regulated, maybe there's a relevant compliance focus area.
So the factors act like inputs to guide prioritization, component choice, and focus area use.
Precisely. They are the dials you use to tune the generic framework.
Section 7.2 then outlines the actual steps in this design process.
Yeah, it presents it as a workflow, usually visualized as flowing through the design factors. There are 4 main stages described.
Straight one.
Understand the enterprise context and strategy. This involves looking at your strategy, goals, risk profile, and current INT issues, those first 4 design factors.
Stage 2.
Determine the initial scope of the governance system. Here you start prioritizing objectives based on that context, often using the goals cascade.
Stage 3.
Refine the scope. Now you bring in the other design factors: threat landscape, compliance needs, role of IT, sourcing model, implementation methods, tech adoption strategy, enterprise size to further refine priorities and identify needs for variants or focus areas.
It's stage 4.
Conclude the governance system design. This involves resolving any conflicting guidance that inevitably arises from different factors pointing in different directions and finalizing the design, the prioritized objectives, target capability levels, required components, and variants.
And it's not just a formula, right?
No, the document is clear. It's not a magic algorithm. Conflicting guidance is normal. The final design requires judgment, discussion, and documented decisions, often using something like a design canvas tool mentioned in the design guide. But following the steps ensures a structured, considered approach to tailoring.
Okay, so that's designing it. Chapter 8 moves on to implementing enterprise governance of IT. Section 8.1 covers the purpose of the separate implementation guide.
The core message here, again, is that implementing EGI successfully requires treating it as an enterprise-wide program of change, not just an isolated IT project.
Because INT is pervasive.
Exactly.
Right.
So the governance needs to be end-to-end, integrated into overall corporate governance. And implementation failures often happen because it's not managed like a proper program lacking sponsorship, having unclear scope or objectives.
So it needs structure, sponsorship, achievable goals.
Yes. And the goal isn't just to implement something, but to achieve sustainable business practice. The approach emphasizes change enablement, empowering both business and IT stakeholders to take ownership through communication, training, and involvement.
And the program eventually closes.
When the improvements are embedded in normal operations and the benefits are being measured and realized, the implementation guide apparently has much more detail on this program management aspect.
Okay. Section 8.2 lays out the COBIT implementation approach itself, a 7-phase life cycle.
That's right, visualized as a cycle because governance is ongoing. Let's quickly run through the phases.
Phase 1.
What are the drivers? Identify the reasons for change, create urgency and desire at the executive level, and outline the initial business case. The business case is fundamental and managed throughout.
Phase 2.
Where are we now? Align INT objectives with strategy and risk. Using the design guide helps here. Prioritize goals and processes. Assess your current process capabilities. Understand the starting point.
Phase 3.
Where do we want to be? Set the target state for improvement. Perform a gap analysis to identify what needs to change. And define potential solutions. Look for quick wins alongside longer-term changes.
Phase 4.
What needs to be done? Plan the feasible solutions in detail. Define concrete projects with their own business cases, and develop the overall change plan for the program.
Phase 5.
How do we get there? Implement the planned solutions through projects. Embed the new practices. Establish performance measures, and monitor progress. Success here needs engagement, communication, top management support, and stakeholder ownership.
Phase 6.
Did we get there? Focus on sustainable transition to business as usual, monitor the achievement of improvement goals using the metrics defined earlier, and track the realization of benefits outlined in the business case.
And Phase 7.
How do we keep the momentum going? Review the overall success of the initiative. Identify further governance improvement needs, reinforce the need for continual improvement, and prioritize the next set of opportunities. Then the cycle potentially repeats.
So it's a classic continual improvement cycle applied to EG implementation.
Exactly. The document also stresses using good program and project management practices throughout, like checkpoints, updating the business case, managing risks, and continuous reporting.
Section 8.3 then just clarifies the relationship between the design guide and the implementation guide.
Yeah, it shows visually how the detailed design steps from the design guide fit primarily within phases 1, 2, and 3 of the implementation lifecycle when you're understanding drivers, assessing the current state, and defining the target state. They work together.
Got it. Designing is part of implementing. Okay, Chapter 9. Getting started with COBIT. Making the case. This sounds very practical.
It is.
Yeah.
Section 9.1 explains this chapter provides a generic guide for preparing a business case to justify investing the time, effort, and resources needed to implement EG using COBIT.
Which you'd need for any significant program.
Absolutely. It notes you should follow any existing internal company approaches for business cases if they exist. Then it introduces an example scenario based on Acme Corporation.
A fictional company.
Fictional? Yes, but designed to be realistic. A large, complex, decentralized, multinational with different types of businesses facing typical governance challenges. Management wants a uniform EGI approach.
So the Acme example illustrates how you might apply the concepts we've discussed to build that justification.
Exactly. It walks through the typical sections of business case. Executive summary, background, business challenges, gap analysis, alternatives considered, proposed solution, scope, methodology, deliverables, risks, stakeholders, and budget considerations.
And it shows Acme needing board buy-in, needing to prioritize implementation across entities.
Facing challenges due to its decentralized nature, needing to focus on capability improvement, using workshops to prioritize objective based on strategy and risk.
And planning a phased approach.
Yes, a phase 1 for development, getting the team, tools, training, comms plan ready, doing pilots, and a phase 2 for ongoing implementation and continual improvement across the group.
And a key point from the Acme case in the document is that the central EGI program doesn't do the fixing itself.
Right. It defines the framework, assesses the state, sets targets, consolidates reporting. But the actual remediation projects to close performance gaps are the responsibility of the individual business units or entities. The program facilitates and monitors.
That seems like a realistic division of labor in a large company. It also highlights the range of stakeholders involved.
From the board's risk committee down to local IT management and internal audit. And it lists common pain points Acme might be facing, like complex IT assurance, managing the workforce, balancing innovation and control, compliance issues, audit findings, things many real companies struggle with.
And it mentions potential risks to the implementation program itself.
Yes, acknowledging that implementing something like this isn't without its own risks, which need to be managed through change enablement and monitoring. The Acme case really serves as a practical, albeit generic, illustration of how to apply COBIT's implementation and design thinking in a real-world-like context to make a case for doing it.
It makes the abstract concepts much more tangible.
Definitely helps connect the dots.
Okay, almost there. Finally, Chapter 10, COBIT and Other Standards. What's covered here?
It's fairly brief in the intro document. Section 10.1 mentions the guiding principle without detailing it. And Section 10.2 basically says this section lists the various standards, frameworks, and regulations that were consulted and referenced during the development of COBIT 2019.
So it points to things like ISO standards, ITIL, NIST frameworks, etc.
Presumably, yes. The key message is that this alignment is intentional and important. It reinforces COBIT's role as that umbrella framework we talked about and ensures it integrates well with other established guidance that organizations might already be using or need to comply with.
Right, so it plays well with others.
That's the idea.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our pretty comprehensive deep dive into the COBIT 2019 framework, introduction and methodology document.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the fundamental why of EGIT and its benefits, through defining what COBIT is and isn't, its core principles for both the system and the framework itself.
The essential building blocks like objectives, components, and focus areas, the crucial role of design factors and tailoring, how performance is managed using capability and maturity.
The steps for designing a tailored system, the phased approach for implementing it as a continuous improvement program, and even a practical look at building the business case via the Acme example.
Our goal really was to act as your instructors, guiding you through the most important concepts from this foundational document, giving you that clear understanding directly from the source material.
And the key takeaways seem pretty clear. COBIT is this comprehensive, flexible framework designed to help organizations effectively govern and manage INT across the entire enterprise.
It provides that crucial distinction between governance and management. It's built on these interacting components guided by core
And
principles.
it's ultimately aimed at helping your organization realize value from INT, optimize the associated risks, and use your resources effectively to support enterprise goals.
Its structured approach, especially with the design factors and the goals cascade, offers a robust way to build and continuously improve a governance system that truly fits your unique situation.
Absolutely. And as we've seen repeatedly, the tailoring is crucial, and implementation isn't really a one-off project. It's more of a continuous journey of improvement.
So, maybe a final thought for you, our listener, as you consider your own enterprise navigating, the ever-increasing complexities of the digital landscape. What does all this mean for your approach? How do you strike that right balance between robust control and governance, which is clearly needed, and the equally critical need for agility, speed, and innovation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Getting that balance right is a critical challenge for leadership at all levels, too.
Indeed, it is. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Yes, thank you. We really hope this has provided you with valuable insights into the foundations of COVID 2019.